I'm sure some of you are aware of the term urban exploration, but if you're not, it's simply when you explore old abandoned buildings. Most people do this mainly for the thrill of it. Others do it either to steal things or to do drugs somewhere that can't be found. However, regardless of your reasons, this can be rather scary. I was pretty big into this urban exploration in college. Me and my 3 friends would often do this at night about every other weekend. That is, until we went to an old haunted asylum about 50 miles outside of town. We heard of the place, but we were not able to find it until one day we decided to look on Google Maps. Sure enough, all paved roads to this place were destroyed. Only dirt roads remained. We decided to go late Friday night. This was perfect because it fit all of my friends' schedules. We take off about 9:30 at night, heading about 50 miles outside of town. About an hour and a half later, we arrived to the dirt road. The dirt road had a large concrete block blocking it, so unfortunately, we were not able to take the car. We parked the car behind some bushes and take off down the road. After about a 20-minute walk, we finally arrived to this hill. We climbed the hill, and on the other side lays before us the huge asylum. The asylum appears to be made up of 3 large buildings. The buildings appear to be about 10 stories tall. This is not including any possible basements. At this time, it's pretty close to midnight. The buildings are pretty intimidating and we're kinda getting spooked. We're out in the middle of the woods, nowhere near civilization, and what's in front of us is a very large asylum that's most likely haunted, if not at least inhabited by druggies or gang members. However, this is exactly what we came for. This is the kind of thrill that we're wanting. Me and my friends then make our way down the hill. At the base of the hill, we see that the whole asylum is gated off by a huge chain link fence with barbed wire at the top. Halfway down the hill, however, my friends and I stop, and we see something that is kind of disturbing. In one of the buildings, there appears to be a light that had turned on. I count the floors on the building to see what floor it was on. The light was on the 9th floor. This is a huge red flag. As much as we like our thrills, we try to avoid other people and conflicts, especially when we're not that close to civilization. Instead of turning around and leaving like rational adults, we decide to stay but not go into that building but another one. We cautiously make our way down the hill and arriving at a chain link fence. We look for a hole in the fence and sure enough there is one. The hole in the fence was clearly cut, another red flag. But despite these 2 huge red flags, we continue our way into the asylum at midnight. We walk over to the base of the building. The building is pretty well boarded up with boards and metal bars covering all the entrances. This brings me a sigh of relief, and yet a bit of disappointment. As much as I was terrified and wanted to leave, there was a part of me that did want to see what was inside. Instead of leaving and turning around, one of my friends suggested that we went to one of the other buildings and check it out. Same scenario with the other buildings. We then went to the building that we said was off limits due to the light being on. At the base of this building, there was indeed a broken window that was able to fit at least one person. Again, it looked like someone made their way inside this building. Someone I didn't want to meet in the middle of the night at a probably haunted asylum. I was then reminded by my friends of how much time it took for us to get here. It was safe to say I was equally torn between being terrified and being curious. But, sure enough, we went inside. I led the way with my flashlight, first peeking my head inside and glaring around. There was nothing inside but a couple of desks and some papers on the ground. There was some glass on the ground, but it was probably from the window I was coming in. I made my way inside and my friends quickly followed, our feet crunching with the glass on the ground. The room was completely black, minus our flashlights. It would be impossible to navigate without them. This being that the building had no electricity and it was midnight, in the middle of nowhere. Thankfully, me and my friends all had flashlights. This not only allowed us to see, but allowed us to also explore other rooms separately, allowing us to explore more quickly. This was really good news for me, mainly because we would not be there as long. My friends and I separated, being no further than a room apart. The first floor seemed to be comprised of mainly offices, a lot of paperwork and desks. Nothing too interesting here. We all made our way into the main hallway. The hallway seemed very long and dark. Our flashlights were not able to reach the end of it. My friends and I wandered aimlessly, looking for a set of stairs to lead us up or down. Sure enough, in about 15 minutes, we did find a set of stairs. The set of stairs led both up and down, and was also covered with spray paint. On the set of stairs that were leading up was spray painted the words, "Ascend to your maker." On the set of stairs leading down, however, was just one word: hell. It might seem that me and my friends were pretty brave entering this asylum in the middle of the woods at midnight, but we were not brave enough to go down into a basement titled Hell. We then slowly and quietly ascended to the second story, making sure not to notify whoever it was on the 9th floor. The second story was much different than the base level. Instead of papers and office equipment, were beds and rooms that seemed to be padded. The beds were actually more spooky than the padded rooms. Some of them had restraints on them. The padded rooms were surprisingly not that soft. I know this because I tried to throw myself against it and it actually hurt. It was pretty stupid, I know. The same things were on the 3rd and 4th floor, beds and padded rooms. We then went to the 5th floor, and by this time, it was pretty close to 2 in the morning. With the amount of time that has passed and the excitement of exploring a possible haunted asylum, we forgot about earlier and what happened on the 9th floor, us seeing that light. Instead of slowly peering out into the hallway looking down the hall, we just walked out into the hall. This was a huge mistake. Near the end of the hall appeared to be a light. The light wasn't shining at us, but rather there was someone standing in between the light and us, meaning that someone was using a flashlight facing the other way, looking around. We quickly ran back into the stairs, and we all held our breaths. "Do you think they saw us?" my one friend asked. "Do you think they heard us?" I responded. "I don't know. Maybe," my friend said back. "Okay, I think it's time to go," I said. At that exact moment, we heard a very loud scream of a woman about 3 stories above us. We took off down the stairs. While making our way down the stairs, I was able to hear footsteps above us making their way down the stairs. I was fairly certain at this time that whoever it was, they were onto us. We ran down the stairs as fast as we could, but for some reason, they were still gaining on us. We could hear screams and wailing coming from above. They almost sounded demonic in nature. We decided to peel off from the stairwell and hide on the 2nd floor, letting whoever was following us pass us. We hid in about the 3rd room from the stairs, letting whoever was following us pass us without us being seen. We were waiting in the darkness because we had our flashlights off. My friends and I decided to look for a window or something that we could jump out of. The 2nd story wasn't that tall, and being able to jump shouldn't be an issue. Again, we were walking around in darkness. The lights from our flashlight would have probably given away our position. We were walking in complete darkness, looking for any bits of light indicating a window to the outside. We were able to hear whatever was following us go down the other set of stairs. They were off our trail, for now. In that very brief moment of relief, things quickly changed. As I was walking around in the darkness, I began to feel the sensation of weightlessness. This sensation was quickly replaced by the ground quickly coming to my legs and body abruptly. I fumbled around and grabbed my flashlight. I was now in the basement. I have no idea how this happened until I shined my flashlight up. There was a giant hole in the 2nd and 1st story of the building. I had fallen through both and was now in the basement. I did my best to contain my sound, but I definitely made some noise. I shined my light around the basement. There were a lot of boxes and a lot of containers of some kind. The wall was lined with what felt like cubbies or lockers that were not very tall. The cubbies were about 2 feet in height, and after some time I finally realized where I was. I was in the asylum's morgue. I could see my friends above me 2 stories up. They were shining their lights down the hole and asking if I was okay, stupidly giving away their position. During this time, however, I did hear noises coming from the west side of the building, and they were getting louder. I could see faint lights shining through the boxes and containers, as if someone was looking in the basement. I quickly got up and improvised. I looked for containers or boxes that I could hide in, but none were my size. I then looked to the wall. I quickly opened a slot, hoping that there was no one inside, and sure enough, it was empty. The sounds in the basement were getting louder. The same devilish and demonic screams were coming again, but closer. It almost got to the point, whatever it was in the basement with me was not human. I quickly climbed inside the container on the wall and closed it as quietly as I could behind me. At this time, whatever it was in the basement felt like it was right on top of me. I could hear the sound of what sounded like metal scraping on the ground. It sounded like a heavy bar or a pipe of some kind. I laid as best as I could silently within the container. My pulse was pounding, and whatever it was searching for me, I felt like it was able to hear it or something. I was hiding within this dark container, and it felt like an eternity, even though it was more like 2 or 3 minutes. Whatever it was searching for me was thrashing around, screaming and yelling. A couple of times it sounded as if the thing was only a couple of feet away outside. I wanted to get a look at whatever it was that was chasing me. Obviously it was human, but a part of me told me that it wasn't. I slowly crept open the small hatch in my container. The noise continued in the basement, and whatever it was not able to hear me, thank goodness. The basement was still pitch black, but I was still able to hear the thing, only a couple of feet away. Whatever it was that was searching for me did not need light. This terrified me, because either the person's eyes were adjusted, or it didn't even need sight at all. Thankfully at this time, my friends decided to help out. They began to shine the light down from the first-story hole and call out my name from above. This not only grabbed my attention, but the person that was in the basement with me. The person then emerged from the darkness, stepping into the small pillar of light shining from above. To this day, I will never truly be able to express what I saw that night. This was no person. Whatever it was, it didn't have skin, but it did have muscle. It was lean and tall. It was hunched over and its arms seemed very long. The hands appeared to be dragging on the ground. That is what was making the metal sound. Its claws. I was right about one thing. The creature didn't have sight. I was not able to see any eyes on its face. But what I was able to see were fangs, and lots of them. My adrenaline was spiking an all-time high. I was looking at what I thought was a literal demon, and my friends saw it too. I was able to hear them cry in disbelief, partly seeing the creature, but also knowing that I probably was dead. I was thinking the same. I could then hear my friends sprinting away, probably to the window that led us into the building. The creature, or should I say demon, was taking off towards the stairs and up. This was my chance to escape. I emerged from the coffin-like container from the wall. Each sound I made sounded like a small explosion. I could hear my pulse beating in my neck. I am not ashamed to say that I began crying, knowing that any moment could be my last at the hands of this demon. My death felt inevitable, and I knew it was going to be painful. Yet, I pressed on as best as I could, trying not to make a sound. The basement was pitch dark, and I knew that the creature was above me running around, chasing my friends. I then decided to take my chances and turn on my flashlight. This was either really brave or really stupid. I would much rather die knowing what was coming at me. The basement was surprisingly long, longer than I remember the building being. The basement probably connected to the other buildings. As I was running in the basement, I could hear thrashing around upstairs. It sounded as if whatever it was caught one of my friends. I could hear 2 different types of screams, one from the creature and one from someone else. After what sounded like 30 seconds of thrashing around, the screaming stopped. I did my best to distance myself from the screaming and the creature. Whatever had happened, I was only hoping it was enough to distract the creature, enough for me to escape. I shined my flashlight down the long and endless hallway, looking for any type of stairs. After what felt like an eternity wandering in this dark wasteland of a basement, I stumbled across a set of stairs. Unfortunately, they did not lead up. I was definitely in the basement. How are there still stairs leading down? I disregarded the stairs and kept walking further and further down the hallway. I glanced down at my wristwatch and I clicked the glow button. To my dismay, it was 4:30 a.m. I must have been walking for at least a couple hours, and still I was not at the end of the hallway in the basement. This could not be possible unless I got turned around and kept walking in circles, or the basement hallway is literally miles. By this time, I had almost forgotten completely about the creature that had been following me and my friends. I was now concerned about being able to leave the actual basement. Again, I kept finding sets of stairs, but they kept leading down. By this time, I glanced back down at my wristwatch. It was 4:57. Out of confusion and desperation, I finally just went down the set of stairs that were the closest near me. Surely they must lead somewhere. I descended deeper and deeper into the darkness. I reached the bottom of the stairs, and to my surprise, I saw a light. It was a small green light mounted on the wall. This green light wasn't very bright, but in comparison to the dark basement, it was able to illuminate a good portion of the hallway. Next to the light appeared to be what looked like a garage door of some kind, except the material was much stronger. Underneath the light were the words Unit 237. This was quite fascinating. Is the asylum's backup system still on? This is something you never see in an abandoned building. I looked down the long hallway, and to my surprise, I saw more green lights. This time underneath the green lights were different unit numbers, each unit number being smaller than the previous one. By this time, I was able to finally see the end of the hallway. The whole hallway was now illuminated with these green lights and these different units. However, there was one unit with a red light above it. I stopped briefly and investigated. The unit door was torn open by what looked like claws. I was able to peer inside and see that there was a setup for what looked like a person. It looked like there was a bed with some restraints nearby, an IV station and a monitor. There was blood everywhere. The floors, the walls, even on the ceiling. What is going on? I turned my attention to the end of the hall. At the end was a door with a white light coming from the bottom of it. Did this door lead outside? Was I finally able to get out of this basement? I began running in excitement, forgetting about the events earlier and the fact that my friends were probably dead. I pushed open the door and entered the room. My hopes were instantly replaced by confusion. It took me a brief moment to realize where I was. The room was filled with light and I was disoriented for being in the darkness for so long. After my eyes were able to adjust to the light, I finally saw where I was. I was not outside. I was inside a lab. I was in what looked like a testing facility. There were people all around me, but they appeared to be on other sides of what looked like bulletproof glass. They were all wearing hazmat suits. Some behind desks, others holding beakers and vials doing some kind of chemistry equation. Others were holding machine guns. But what was more concerning rather than the people with machine guns were the creatures in the glass tubes. The creatures were tall, skinless, very lean, almost identical to the creature that I saw earlier that night. There looked to be at least 30 or 40 of these tubes, all containing these creatures inside. I was completely paralyzed with confusion. I was definitely somewhere I was not supposed to be. It looked like a government facility of some kind, or at least a private company that was well funded. I tried my best to turn around and run out before I was noticed by anyone, but a large reinforcing door came down quickly, blocking the door I came in from. I then heard a man's voice over the radio.
"You there, identify yourself."
I'm no one, I swear. I won't tell anyone what I saw here."
"I'm sure you won't,"
he said, almost chuckling. At this time, 5 people entered the room, all in hazmat suits, holding machine guns. They all cocked their weapons and pointed them at me. At this moment, I knew I was going to die. But to my surprise, instead of the sound of gunfire, was the sound of the man on the overhead.
Hold your fire. I have a better idea.
The guards were just as confused as I was. Behind me, that big heavy door that closed earlier opened up, slowly. I slowly backpedaled to the door, thinking at any moment one of these guards were going to shoot me in the back of the head. But they didn't. Right before I exited the lab, the man on the intercom once more spoke to me. He said,
"Good luck."
I left the lab, and to my surprise, instead of being met by the dark hallway, the hallway was now illuminated brightly. I could hear behind me the reinforcing door closing again on the other side. I was not able to go back into the lab. Talk about a huge break. Now all I had to do was just find my way out of here. Before I could make another step, a loud siren went off above me. The closest door near me that was green turned red. The door opened. Behind the door was a creature, ready to feed.